for Bridget's third speech, Get to the Point. I mentioned primary, because Bridget is leveraging today's speech as a practice session for speech that she'll be presenting to a leadership academy later this week. So I'm going to try to be especially attentive of her as I go through the evaluation. I'd like all of you to be attentive to her also. I left some of the company-generated evaluation forms, and many ones we have. She's also courageously decided to take some verbal feedback from the group on her speech as she wraps up. Her approach is going to be to quickly cover the first 3 chapters to give us a little bit of feedback on the book that she's going to be working from. And in particular, Chapter 4, she'll focus on Chapter 4, Creating Positive Change. Bridget plans to leverage learnings from Projects 1 and 2 to help her organize her speech and achieve her purpose to help us recognize leadership attributes we already possess. She's a firm believer in creating a positive change and wants that to come across as she covers her informational topic. I did just a bit of research on the book myself, and I'm looking forward to the speech, and I may actually go as far as checking out the book. I haven't read a book in years, but it took my interest. So please join me in welcoming Bridget Robinson. Project 3, Leadership, Creating a Positive Change, 5 to 7 minutes, please.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Bob had mentioned that I'm working through a book. It's by John Maxwell, Developing the Leader Within You. And it is one of the best books I've read in a long time. As we focus on leadership development of ourselves across the board, I've had the opportunity to be part of a leadership academy at the college. And it's a wonderful opportunity for employees to come on board, to meet and get to know one another better, but to also learn about ourselves and how we are all leaders, and we all have attributes of leadership qualities and characteristics. So buckle up your seatbelt because there's a lot of information. Like Bob said, I'm going to cover 3 chapters at the beginning, and then we're going to focus on the 4th chapter, which is creating positive change. And I gave you all this brief overview so you can follow along with what I have to say as far as the book goes. So we're going to jump right in. The first attribute to a leader is influence. He who thinketh he leadeth, and have no one following him, he is only taking a walk. So perception is obviously a huge characteristic of a leader, where we need to recognize that we have these leadership qualities, but we also have to have followers to be a leader. So leadership is the ability to obtain these followers. We have leaders all around us, including all of you. We all have the power to influence, and I'd like to read for you this poem. My influence. My life shall touch a dozen lives before this day is done. Leave countless marks of good or ill, ere sets the evening sun. This, the wish I always wish, the prayer I always pray, Lord, may my life help others' lives it touches by the way. And I think we all have the power of influence. We talked a little bit about this last week as we talked about doing kindness for others, and whether we make a positive impact on somebody or a negative impact, we leave an impact. So as we go throughout the day as leaders, we want to try to think and concentrate on the way that we're impacting others. There's 5 levels of leadership: position, permission, production, people development, and personhood. And I'm going to talk briefly about these 5 different levels. The position is your job title. People follow you because it's a title that you've been given and you are their boss, right? The level 2 is permission, and this is where the relationships are built. You begin to get to know your coworkers or someone that you're supervising on a different level. They begin to trust you. And then that's when they begin to follow you, because they trust you and you've built a relationship with them. The 3rd level is results. People follow you because of what you've done for the organization. So you're setting an example, you're doing things on your own, you're building those relationships of trust, and then they begin to see the impact that you're making and they want to become part of it. The fourth is people development. So because of what you've done for your organization and what you've done for others, they begin to recognize that you're developing them as a person. You become a leader yourself, and then you have the ability to help other people develop. And then the fifth level, which very, very few people actually reach, is personhood. So it's an all-encompassing, everything you do, everything you say you do, you say, and people follow you because of who you are and what you represent. The second chapter focuses on priorities, so how we prioritize our work throughout the day, what are the tasks that we're trying to achieve, and then what are the bigger functions, right? So we spend a lot of time on mundane, boring, maybe, what's the word I'm looking for? Systematical things, right? So we have to send out these emails, we have to call a certain number of people in a day. So these are all tasks, but they don't really help us grow, right? They don't really help us towards the function of our organization. So for me, example in development, if I'm just shooting off emails to coworkers, I'm not really building or cultivating relationships with alumni. So the Pareto principle is something that may be a new concept to you, but if we spend 20% of our time on priorities, then 80% of our production, you will give 80% of your production. So 20% of your priorities will give you 80% of your production if you spend your time, energy, money, and personnel on the top 20% of your priorities. So they talk a little bit about the top 20% of your organization, which are the individuals, the bosses, the supervisors, if you're, or the influencers. If you're spending time investing in these individuals, then they will help grow you 80%. We teach what we know, we reproduce what we are, is kind of the message for that one. The third chapter focuses on integrity. So the foundation of integrity is not what we do, it's who we are. Leading by being honest and authentic, by example and through demonstration. What they hear, they understand, but what they see, they believe. So followers expect 4 things from a leader: for them to be honest to them, for them to be competent, to be visionaries, and also to be inspirational towards them. And the measure of a man's real character is what he does when nobody is watching. And then chapter 4, creating positive change. Everything falls and rises on leadership. Where do we start? We start with me, we start with ourselves. So the first order of things to be changed is the leader of an organization. And I'd like to read you this. This is a Middle Eastern mystic said, "I was a revolutionary when I was young, and all my prayer to God was, Lord, give me the energy to change the world. As I approached middle age and realized my life was half gone without my changing a single soul, I changed my prayer to, Lord, give me the grace to change all those who come into contact with me, not just my family and friends, and then I shall be satisfied. Now that I'm an old man and my days are numbered, I've begun to see how foolish I have been. My one prayer now is, Lord, give me the grace to change myself. If I had prayed for this right from the start, I would not have wasted my life." So hypothetically, think of saying, this is a little exercise to think about how have you changed, maybe just in this week, maybe in the past month or the past year. We've heard about some transformational stories from some of our other members in regards to change and how positive these changes can be. So the leader, like I had mentioned, is the change agent. They're the ones that are trying to get their other folks to change and to grow, essentially. So there is a historical account of resistance to change, obviously. It seizes every generation by the throat and attempts to stop all forward movement toward progress. So why do people resist change? It's not self-initiated, it wasn't their idea, right? They're not going to get the glory for it, so they don't want to do that. It disrupts people's routine. They're used to doing something. This is how we've always done it. Change creates fear of the unknown. It may expose some people, expose some weaknesses in them. Maybe it's unclear. They're not really sure what the vision is and how they can be part of that change. It creates a fear of failure. We have to put ourselves out there in order to grow and change. The rewards for change don't match up with the effort that the change requires. Or people are just stagnant. They're too satisfied with the way things are. Don't look, you might see. Don't listen, you might hear. Don't think, you might learn. Don't make a decision, you might be wrong. Don't walk, you might stumble. Don't run, you might fall. Don't live, you might die. There is a process to change, and there's different levels of the individuals accepting change. They're usually in 5 categories. There's the innovators, the dreamers. These are the individuals that want the change. There's the early adopters. They think it's a good idea. They might get on board. The middle adopters, which are the majority of us, they're influenced by the positive or the negative influence of the organization. There's the late adopters who speak out immediately against the change, but eventually they'll come around to the majority. And then there's the laggards. They're always against the change, and they're committed to the status quo, and they're held up in the past. So how do we create a climate for change? Step 1, the leader must develop trust with their people. This brings us back to the 5 levels of leadership, right? So the second level is permission and relationships, and that's where we build the trust. So without the trust, we're not going to be able to have followers, and we're not going to be able to develop change. Step 2, the leader must make personal changes before asking others to change. They have to walk the walk and talk the talk. And step 3, good leaders must understand the history of the organization. J.K. Chesterton suggests, don't take the fence down until you know the reason it was put up. So we have to understand the history of our organization in order to move forward and progress. So give people the ownership for change, inform them in advance, explain the overall objectives, show people how the change will benefit them, participate in the change process. Make sure to encourage questions as you're going over the communications and keep the channels open. It's never too late to change. Max Dupree said, in the end, it is important to remember that we cannot become what we need to be by remaining what we are. When change is successful, you will look back and you will call it, when change is successful, you will look back at it and call it growth. Thank you so much.